This week on Barbell Shrugged, we celebrate Christmas. Talk about supplements, steroids, moderate weights at medium speeds, and getting stronger.
Santa, I want something paleo.
This is what we have to go with.
Yep.
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike Bledsoe here with Doug Larson.
Episode.
You bet.
Doug Larson and Chris Moore. This is the Christmas episode. Our guest, Brad Pope.
Merry Christmas.
If only you knew what we were talking about before we turned the microphones on.
But you never will.
That's right.
It's not appropriate for children's ears.
Nope.
Just so you know, Brad Pope is known for being able to move moderate weights at medium speeds at Faction Strength and Conditioning.
You're welcome.
You want to tell the... before we get into that, I'm going to remind you guys to go to fitter.tv. That's FITR.tv. Sign up for our newsletter so you can get updated whenever we do new technique wads, new Barbell Shrugged episodes, and the Daily BS, where we answer all the questions you guys submit. We go there and just do short, 2 to 5 minute videos and try and get those answered since we're terrible about doing them on this show. We thought we were going to be good at it. But we're not. We're pretty bad, actually. We're bringing Brad on, not only because he can move moderate weight at medium speeds, but because he also might be. Is that right?
That's right. Might be. I don't know. You're gonna have to finish that sentence for me before I can tell you if that's true or not.
He may or may not be involved in the supplement industry. The Chinese supplement industry.
No, I'm definitely involved in that.
Oh, okay.
That's a fair statement.
So assume for the rest of this episode that these things that we talk about may or may not be true, just in case we step over the line somewhere.
Yeah, to clear that up, I work in the supplement industry, and I also have many friends who work in the supplement industry who have seen some very interesting things. So I'll try to give you guys some insight into that.
And not only that, the supplement industry not only is it just like selling supplements to stores and stuff like that, but the supplement industry that you work with may or may not be multi-level marketing.
Yeah, we have several distributors. Our business doesn't go directly to retail outlets in China. We go to several distributors, and some of those distributors are better than others, and some of them have better business practices than others, but and some of them aren't so great, but that's not really our concern. How you run your business in China after you get our product doesn't matter to us. So
We want money.
more or less, yeah.
Oh, shit. Hey, Chris, turn your microphone 180 degrees, please.
Oh.
You are not... There you go. Keep going.
Hello?
Now speaking to the mic.
Much better.
Check.
There you go.
Oh, God. Those two bad jokes I told were lost to the world forever.
I mean, you could hear it, just not well.
I kind of like it the other way. Can we go back to that?
Hey, Brad.
Just kidding. Love you, buddy.
That's mean.
Poor Chris.
No respect.
I don't know. Chris is bringing a lot of good feedback on Twitter. People like you.
People
Surprisingly.
don't hate me. Surprisingly.
I don't know.
Who's the biggest douche on Twitter, you or I?
I probably used to be, but I think you're winning.
If you up the political libertarian rants, I think you'll take it.
I've actually kind of taken a break from all political stuff.
Good.
I've let Brad
actually
handle all of my political fights on Facebook.
Yeah, we have a slap system in place now. So anytime I find myself jumping out of line, I just remind Mike to slap me anytime I get into a...
Yeah, so Brad and I have rules. Brad and I agree 95% of the time about politics and economics. So if he ends up saying there's certain times on Facebook when we recognize that it's probably not a smart thing to get involved in the conversation.
But you just can't help yourself.
You can't. So if I see that he's done that, then I have the permission to slap him in the face,
Right.
and vice versa. So
Right.
I pretty much just stopped posting altogether.
Yeah,
He'll
good
slap
call.
you with medium intensity at a medium speed.
That's right.
It's still painful.
Yeah.
Moderate force at medium speed.
So what kind of awesome supplements are you getting from this distributor?
We are selling awesome supplements to this distributor.
Right.
So,
Okay.
Our main product is kind of a heavy water product, which probably wouldn't sell that well in America. It's not really. It's kind of a perceived benefit supplement is what we'll call it, rather than.
What's the big selling point there?
They like it is the big selling point.
There you go.
But
Are there any like shark fins, black bear bladders?
yeah, I think we talked about that a little bit the last time I was here. Is there's definitely a market for, homeopathic remedies, what we call it, or like ancient remedies, or whatever you would want to call it. I don't know, old wives' tale type stuff, and where the Chinese market really goes crazy is when they have a product that is kind of like an old product or a homeopathic product that people have believed to work for all these years, and then there's some sort of scientific backing to kind of confirm that bias that, like, St. John's wort is good for your memory. They've been using St. John's wort for thousands of years, or ginseng is another one. They've been using ginseng for thousands of years, and then when modern
Which is horse
science,
shit.
all right, then when modern science backs that
My
up,
cousin died of ginseng overdose.
is that true?
No.
No.
I'm pretty sure I've had a cousin die of something, though. That could be true.
Yeah. So, well, I
I had a cousin at one point. Now I don't have a cousin anymore.
right.
I'm sure he died of something.
But curiously enough,
Ginseng is just as good as anything
I
else.
know of,
right?
like, in the business I'm in, there's a curious association between homeopathic supplements
Right.
and like spikes and like hip dysplasia development in Chinese populations, where they take stuff and it predisposes them to certain developmental conditions,
Right.
such as the kind you may need to be treated by an orthopedic industry leader.
Right.
So it presents some curious business opportunities.
Sure.
On all sides.
Sure.
That's actually true.
So some of this stuff is making you more money, Chris.
Not me. People who own me make more money.
The company you work for that pays you.
Right.
Could
So
benefit
you're not making any money off of this.
No, not me. No, don't you know how capitalism works?
Right. Right.
So
You're
what's
the
the-
wage slave.
I'm definitely confused right now.
Yeah.
So the heavy water is the most popular supplement in China right now, or
Oh, well,
is that
I
the most
wouldn't,
popular one that you guys are
yeah,
a
I
part
wouldn't,
of?
I wouldn't say that's the most popular supplement in China. I'd say that's far and away the most popular one that we sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the
Have-
most popular one in China?
And let's clarify something. We are not a large company in China, not by any stretch of the imagination. Our distributors are not large, but the thing about it is when you've got a city of 10, 12 million people, if you get 0.01% of the marketplace, you've got 100,000 people that want to buy your product on a regular basis. It's kind of scraping the bottom of the pyramid to get any percentage of interest, and it's something that you would really have to visit China to understand. And that's not me being a jerk and being like, oh, I've been there, I'm so much better than you, but just the volume and condensation of people in China, just makes in any sort of niche market just exponentially greater opportunity for profit than it is here.
So I'm not sure if you'd know much about this or not, but China is huge in the weightlifting world. They always do well at the Olympics and the World Championships and whatnot.
Right.
Do you have any insight into the type of supplements or what we would call illegal performance enhancing drugs that they might be using?
Yeah, to be honest with you, Doug, I don't like that. That I would assume that probably a lot of that goes on. I could kind of tell you. I can tell you this in regards to that. My friend who we talked about earlier, Paul, who's been over there for a long time. He's been doing business in China for 20 years and 20 plus years probably. His wife is Chinese and he's lived there. He speaks fluent Chinese. He's very kind of engulfed in Chinese culture and very integrated to Chinese culture. We had a conversation about 4 beers deep. And
That's where some of the best conversations happen.
right, it is for sure. And I asked him,
Key for brainstorming too.
No doubt.
yeah. So I feel like that's probably how this podcast was born. Anyway,
It was scotch, not beer.
right. So I asked him, what do you think is the best and worst thing about living here? And to be honest, I was a little too drunk to remember what the best thing was, but he said the worst thing that he felt was the erosion of kind of morality and business that he's seen
About
happen
being in China?
Yeah, that he's seen happen in China over the last 20 years. There was a prominent Chinese leader who said, "To be rich is glorious," and the country kind of really took that to heart. And so,
Well, if not, they were going to be murdered. So, take it to heart.
yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would go that far, but there definitely he said there's definitely been kind of an erosion in consideration for moral consequence or consideration for moral purity for the sake of profit and winning, we'll call it. So, to think that Chinese weightlifters or American weightlifters or any weightlifter is not on some level probably using vitamin S, as we'll call it, is naive for sure. There's always going to be a population of those people. Could I give you a number? No, I have no idea.
If you look at I wish I could find the link, but on Imager, imgur.com, great photo sharing site. Somebody set up a photo library of pictures from youth gymnastics training camps in China.
Right.
And this is glorious and shocking in all the sorts of bad ways.
Right.
Like there's this one of the pictures in particular. Well, I'll describe two. One is these two wooden blocks that are clearly made for you to put your ankles upon, sort of straddle.
Right.
And then it's like a 6-7-year-old girl doing the splits on these with like a middle-aged Chinese coach shoving her down with tears running down her face.
Sure.
And the other one is these what look to be toddlers draped out across like a chin-up bar with their feet probably like 8 or 10 feet off the ground. And they're all crying with very distressed looks on their faces because the training objective is clearly to make these kids hang if they fall and thus stop training their grip strength and their ability to hang on a parallel bar or whatever. Then they fall and maybe break their ankle and sit there and scream for an hour. So this is the lesser of two evils. This is like the sort of coaching methodology is being put in place.
Sure.
And the idea of taking a supplement that is largely not legal and maybe taking doping your test to get around what they'll screen for at Olympic Games is probably not on the list of the most extreme things going on.
Sure. and you see that anywhere,
Yeah.
To kind of take it to, I've spent some time in Japan as well. And, if you look at sumo and sumo culture, the way those guys train and the kind of the way they're kind of really kind of forced around in a sumo stable is definitely similar to that type of environment. It's just hyper competitive, whether you really want to be hyper competitive or not.
And people think that is, fat lazy guys push each other around.
Definitely not.
No, you have never seen sumo wrestlers compete. Well, one, they're force feeding themselves, which on its own would be a terrible sport to compete in.
Yeah.
If you had to sit down and couldn't stand up until you ate 20 pounds of whatever the hell they put in front of you. But they train brutally.
Yeah,
hard.
the lower. Yeah, I know exactly what you're about to ask. Aren't the lower ranked guys treated horribly? And
they're just shit on the whole time.
Yeah, and
speaking of shit, don't they have to fucking wipe the other guys?
Almost
do.
literally.
If
Like the big guys that can't reach.
Yeah,
the lower level guys have to go wipe them.
If you're 380, 400 pounds, it gets pretty
that's
tough
a lightweight,
to clean
man.
yourself. Yeah,
That's a lightweight.
And
Wow. That's the first perk I've heard from being extremely fat.
yeah,
Some countries,
someone
people
else
have
gets
to wipe your ass.
right.
Yeah. Or they faced extreme dishonor.
So yeah, and so you were talking about falling off the bar. I mean, would you rather, you can either win and improve in rank and have somebody else wiping your ass, or you can lose and kind of stay at the low level. Yeah.
How about we try that at Faction? If you play slow in the WOD, you wipe the winner's ass.
I don't know.
Oh, you
Chris.
signed the contract. You have to pay a $500 penalty by law.
I think we'd be making a lot of money.
But the key thing to consider is, I think,
the money instead of the ass wiping.
come back to a point I thought of when you were talking, I think the American culture is to say, look what these foreign people do. Isn't that stupid? We don't do anything stupid. These assholes eat chicken feet, for example. Or, XYZ, they drink heavy water. What idiots.
Right.
And then what do we do that is at least as idiotic?
Yeah, I mean, we totally.
You'll laugh at a guy for drinking hard water for whatever you sell that for. We don't have to know every detail of your sordid business. But but at the same time, I'll get a post from some guy on Facebook. Hey, man, I haven't talked to you in 10 years, but I see you're in the CrossFit. I'm not in the CrossFit. I'm just loosely associated with this glorious brand. They said to me, I wanted to share with you the story of my wife. My wife and I have been taking Advocare supplements now for a year, and she has competed in the St. Jude Marathon. And I think, if you want to maybe try it out, I can give you a special coupon code, blah, 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 for $800 or whatever the shit this package costs for a month.
Thanks, buddy.
And people think, oh, wow, this is, I'm just changing lives here. And they don't have any perception of the silly shit that they're doing. Or some guy who looks like he's, a materialized version of the Incredible Hulk says, you should take this supplement and use my device and train with my method. And you too, CrossFitter, could easily add X to your lifts, whatever. And no one stops to think that this is all just silliness and stupidness.
Sure. I mean, you walk into your local vitamin shop or supplement store or whatever, you might see, 10% of the stuff that may actually give you 1% benefit or greater. Most of that stuff is just junk.
And a curious inverse relationship between cost and efficacy. I found the most effective thing in that place is just cheap creatine. It's like $5 for a bucket of it.
And
with loads of scientific evidence backing up why you should just spend $5 to get this thing.
Right.
And the other thing, which is flat out just dangerous and silly, you have to mortgage it to get your supply of it.
Yeah, I was actually when I was in St. Louis last week, I was in a supplement store, and it was actually a pretty good supplement store. People there were pretty knowledgeable, but I had this conversation walking out with Corey, and we were just kind of talking about the amount of money you could spend on supplement, X, Y, Z, or whatever it is, or you could just probably stop drinking that beer on Saturday night and save the money. And it have a much bigger effect, just like removing that one thing from your diet or adding something to your diet. Maybe you should eat 3 more servings of vegetables per day instead of spending $50 on this weird supplement over there. And you probably get way more benefit out of it. And I mean,
if you were really that hard up and sort of disengaged with what you really sought in your own life and the kind of goals you were making, if you really just didn't care about anything other than just forking out money and getting a result, you should just take that money and buy a bunch of steroids with it. I mean, shit. Be honest with yourself.
I mean, a lot of those supplements are effective, but it's to such a small degree, it's probably not worth the money. It's like you'll see a 1% increase for extra $100 a month. You could probably, at some point, it just makes sense to do steroids, I think.
Yeah, it's like running really high grade oil in your car. It's not going to add 2,000 horsepower. It's going to give you a marginal benefit in engine life, maybe.
I think what everybody could stand in this glorious age of information, I mentioned it briefly before, is this good old fashioned, just a little dose of honesty, and perspective. Like a lot of these guys have some good advice you could apply to your training. Fair enough. And all these ebooks and all this bullshit, there's good information to be had. Some of it's common sense, some of it's not. But learning is always good. But I saw on All Things Gym, guy's got a great site. I like to plug it whenever I can.
Gregor.
He posted a really cool, honest video of Dorian Yates, who most people who listen to the show probably remember Dorian Yates being the guy in the magazines that you idolized when you were in middle school. He was
Barn
the
door
guy.
lats.
He was pre Ronnie Coleman, master of the universe, all things bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. My brother, who's now 40, when he was in high school and college, he was going through a bodybuilding phase. I remember that he'd bringing home bags of egg protein powder and trying to be a bodybuilder, which failed miserably. But he had like Dorian Yates' training video, and we had pictures of Dorian Yates all over the kitchen table. Like, my brother, 170 pounds of him posing, and it's like, what do I need to do to get the lats of Dorian Yates? Should I do the 1 set to failure? Should I try that machine? I've got one at French Riviera Spa.
Right.
Yeah. But here he is on this thing, and he's like in some Romanian bodybuilding seminar. I guess he's probably still making pretty good coin sharing his experience. But he comes out honest and says, look, here's actually, I saw some things on the internet, the Dorian Yates steroid cycle. So I figured it's probably time for me to come out and just say what I took so people don't try this and kill themselves. He actually is a fairly responsible position to take. He comes out honestly and says, look, to do this, I did this, I took this and these amounts. It's what I did. It wasn't a make or break thing for me. Obviously, he made a pretty good analogy. He said, you could give, in some like marbled British accent, I won't try to replicate that. I will save everybody the pain of that. He says, you could take a small dog and give it steroids, and what do you get? You get a bigger, small dog. But you take a Rottweiler, he's making a parallel. I'm the genetically pure Rottweiler in this scenario, which he probably could argue that. He's a phenomenal bodybuilder. You give them steroids, and now you have a chance for a champion, which is probably true. But what most people don't hear usually is that open, honest message that, look, if you don't do this thing, you don't have even a close shot. You have even a worse shot than you have now, but you can't compete with that guy without doing it. It's true. Another video I saw this week on Elite Fitness, when lifters, so I'll leave the names out, not necessary. But he came out and said, look, if you want to compete in powerlifting or strongman or weightlifting, here's probably what you should take. As in, I don't know why you would try unless you do this fundamental thing like sleeping or eating protein and lifting. You probably need to do this other pillar of being a successful competitor in these sports.
And just to clarify, that other pillar is a steroid regimen, correct?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, is it going to make or break? No, but if you don't do it, you're not going to win a big competition.
Well,
I
Chris,
think that's pretty much true.
I remember you telling me a story at one point when you were, we won't name names or whatever, you were hanging out with some people and you got, I guess you got in a car or something like that. And
yeah, I was in,
I'll let you tell it.
let me tell this story.
I don't want to like botch it for you.
Gather around the fire, ladies and gentlemen. This is a good old-fashioned Christmas steroid story. Yeah, so I was deluded for many years in that I had a goal of being as strong as possible and really thought I could actually compete on a high level without doing drugs. And open honesty, Brad practices lie detector tests. He can grab my arm. I actually have never taken a steroid of any kind ever.
Absolutely unequivocally true.
Yeah. Well, not that was real, but it's actually true. I've never taken any of it ever. Not because I had some sort of moral dilemma with it.
Yeah, and I've actually had this discussion with you.
I didn't do that. I just
didn't. I remember years ago you were talking about, I was telling you, yeah, you should probably do steroids. Like,
yeah,
if you want, because you were talking about going to a certain level, I was like,
yeah,
you're going to have to do it.
And I really believe that not that I would get there, but I believe that I can take a good shot at this. I did okay. I mean, I was probably on an amateur level, I could probably place top 3 at any amateur meet, which I did pretty consistently. And I would go to a professional meet, which oddly enough in powerlifting just means at this meet we don't test. At the amateur ones, they tested you. And the professional ones are sort of like, show up and lift. Hey, trophies. Right. It was just thinly veiled. The difference is drugs.
Sure.
Huh.
And these guys at these amateur meets who were lifting 5 days a week and devoting their fucking lives to powerlifting were totaling X amount. And these other guys who were doing the same thing, all just normal guys who were training really hard, were totaling 400 pounds more for some reason. And that's the only reason.
It's because they were Rottweilers.
Yeah, so I used to go on traincations in this time. And one traincation was to Columbus, Ohio. And during that week-long stay, which all these stays are great, you learn and you progress regardless of what you choose to supplement with. But one thing we did was we took a car ride with this crew of guys from this very famous gym over to, I think it was like Akron or a little bit west of Columbus, whatever the geography of Ohio was, I can't remember. Some city with some hole-in-the-wall bench press meet where 10 guys from this gym were going to show up, put on tight bench shirts, and try to impress 100 people in the crowd by benching like 700 plus pounds. Fair enough. So we went there, we had fun. I didn't lift, but I helped all the guys out. Coming back, it kind of spilled over into a discussion about training, and then it quickly turned into, yeah, I'm so all beat up to shit and blah, blah, blah. And somebody kind of introduced like, well, you should just take more of this thing. It'll help your ligaments and joints. And everybody's like, oh yeah, I should do that. Kind of like I say, oh, Brad, you should try a weightlifting shoe if you have ankle mobility issues. Or you should try to take some vitamin C if you have a cold. Like common knowledge shit that no one thought was provocative at all. Like, oh yeah, I probably should do that.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense.
And that thing that was recommended to be taken was a steroid, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, not that you're a master steroid use, but some steroids that they take to advocate like joint health. Like, this will help your joints feel better. This will help you gain a lot of strength, but you don't want to gain too much too quick because then you could tear your ligaments. So this thing's probably going to help your ligaments. So it was some kind of discussion like that. I don't remember the specifics because, again, don't know this shit.
Right.
But I kind of mentioned like, yeah, I have a problem with that because I usually have to just stop training a little bit because I don't take the drugs. And when I convincingly said I don't take drugs, it was like the record coming off the rails and like complete silence. And the guy in the back goes, what the fuck are you talking about? You don't take drugs. I'm like, I don't take them. He's like, why would you even try? That was the statement. Sure. I almost remember that like stone cold truth. He said, why would you even try to compete without taking steroids? And the guy suggests like, I couldn't even come to the gym if I didn't take the drugs, couldn't recover. And there I was doing this same training programs, these guys, and lifting with them and doing okay. And they suggested you shouldn't even come to train and try if you don't take the steroids.
Sure.
And that was their reality. Like, it'd be like saying, why, like if somebody told you they didn't sleep more than 2 hours a night, why would you even not sleep? That was the kind of response I got. It was that important to them.
In retrospect, I mean, do you regret not taking drugs and being more competitive in your sport?
No, I mean, I was luckily level-headed at the time, although I was willing to gain way too much weight and do damage to joints and to sacrifice personal development. I mean, there's a whole lot of things I could have been doing other than just powerlifting. At the time, I gladly made those sacrifices, and I probably, I didn't carry a whole lot of regrets at that time. I learned a lot of good lessons. I would have done things differently, but that was one thing I didn't screw up on. I knew the whole time that it's probably something I didn't want to venture down, because I knew I wanted to figure out how to make myself as strong as possible without doing the thing that I knew was just a shortcut. I knew I wouldn't gain knowledge by training and also taking that, because I wouldn't know the difference between my training and what effect this drug
kind of
had.
lose sight of the journey at that point.
Because there were guys I could clearly see they were just doing whatever the fuck they thought would be fun that day and getting really strong. I was like, well, what would be the point of just having this given to me? Because if I would have taken the steroids, I would have gone from squatting, I'm sure, 975 to maybe 1100. I would have benched maybe 800 instead of 675. I would have deadlifted 750 instead of struggling like a madman to deadlift 675. And those would have been really good numbers in 2001 or 2002, 2003. It would have been fantastic. So that was the difference, really. Like I say it with clarity. I wouldn't go back and do it. I would never do it now. There's no point. But
yeah, so let me ask you this. Is the only reason you chose not to take them because of their legality?
No, I mean, I've never had much of a fuss over the legal aspects of it, because I realized that, look, if some guy wants to do this to compete in a sport,
sure,
I don't really see why anybody should step in and say. I always had that sort of libertarian slant on that issue. Like, why shouldn't you care if this guy takes steroids? If he can behave and source them responsibly and not poison himself or whatever, I mean, who's to say? I don't care.
Right.
I have an ethical issue with it. My problem always was with the slow realization I'm showing up to a meet to try to win, and some guy's doing this, and he's propping himself up on his training and his approach, and he's not really being honest. He's competing against me and trying to pass off as somebody who's not doing these things.
Sure. So, like I said, the question for me becomes, why didn't you? Like what was the factor that swayed you on to the no, I'm not going to go down this road path?
I guess it boiled down to, like, I want to know what I was capable of.
Sure.
If I can't get there with thinking really hard about training and trying to do it the best way possible, then it just wasn't going to happen. And at that point, I was like, if I took it and just got an extra 100 pounds on lifts, I didn't ever find that to be a very satisfying idea. That's what drives me now. Like, what I write about and what I talk about and what I try to communicate is that, look, you can go after these goals and you can have the attitude, I'll do whatever it takes to get there. But once you get there, you got to realize, looking back, was this worth it? Did I go after this for the right reasons? Was it on my terms? Because those are the things that actually make the goal meaningful to you, not that you did something. I've trained up until the very recent past with guys who were training for reasons that weren't necessarily their own. They wanted something but didn't even ask what the goal of it was. They were going to take whatever and do whatever just to get somewhere.
Right.
And you get there and you realize none of that was really worth it. And you've blown 5 years in pursuit of something that was sort of a mirage. You didn't even take the time to think about it.
Yeah.
What did you get out of it? What do you have to show for it? So I want people to, as they begin, it's a kind of a luxury. If you can begin the process thinking about, okay, what do I really want out of this? What am I willing to give up? What kind of balance am I after? What do I want to develop? What do I want to also do on the side to have fun? Keep proper perspective as I go through this. In 5 years, you could have an incredibly rewarding experience and save yourself all this struggle that we all have to go through on some level or another.
Sure.
That's sort of my take on all that.
Do you competing in a sport that has like a culture of like steroid use being pretty much the norm, and then now you hang out with a bunch of CrossFitters essentially, and you watch the games and stuff like that. Do you kind of see the same stuff going on, or do you think that CrossFit competitions are relatively drug free? I just want to know your opinion on that. I mean,
sometimes I wonder, because you see the same sorts of, I'll do whatever shit it takes to nail this wad. The same kind of personalities emerge as they do in weightlifting and powerlifting and strongman, where if I got to pay $100 for calf compression sleeves, I'll do it. If it means I can double under 5% faster.
Sure.
So I would never put it past somebody to take things to get better, especially now that money is coming into play on CrossFit.
Yep.
Some people are going to take shit to do better, whether it's just massive amounts of something that's legal or whether they venture into things to get recovery. Because I'm not actually sure how savvy the drug testing protocols at some of these meets for CrossFit are, or if they even test. Like at CrossFit Games, are they screening athletes?
They
random
test a
drug
little
testing?
bit now. You know what they do?
Yeah. Well, they're taking urine at regionals from the top competitors. I know one of the girls that got tested this last time. And I can't remember if they took blood or not, but I think all they took was urine.
One thing's for sure, when the CrossFit Games kicked off, no one even probably put a second thought towards drug testing. Everybody showed up in a field. They did the little hopper testing, and everybody had a good time.
They started testing in 2010, or at least they announced that they were going to be testing in 2010.
I mean, we probably can all agree, as soon as you put this sport on ESPN, and as soon as you throw a $250,000 purse to the winner, and as soon as sponsorship rolls in, and as soon as this sport becomes anything like, football or, Tour de France cycling or something where there's big money and notoriety to be had, and you attract more athletes who are willing to really compete at all costs, this is going to be a problem.
And that's the other thing is tracking year round. They're only testing at the competition.
Yeah.
And you talk to some guys that are experts and getting past tests, like
and maybe
Victor
it won't
Conte.
come from exactly.
You talk to that guy, and he's got information online on how to bypass.
Yeah,
it's not hard to find. Like, you just stop taking this stuff this far out. You do this, you mask it this way,
and Doug can probably talk about this from an MMA standpoint. 2000 or 95, 96, when UFC was getting off the ground and it really wasn't a big deal. Nobody ever popped positive for steroids, but since Ultimate Fighter Season 1, the proliferation of steroids in MMA has been
it's almost becoming
much
normal.
higher.
Exactly what Chris is talking about.
Yeah.
Once money, once people were getting more money for fighting, and there was a lot more fame involved, then it started to become a bigger
People want
issue.
that shit, man. They get it at all costs.
It's really disappointing. This is my take on it from somebody who's a very bordering on beginner, possibly intermediate, moving to intermediate stage CrossFitter. It's really
You're the medium guy,
right. I'm
solid medium,
moderate weight, medium.
You're not
speed.
a beginner.
me. Excel at mediocrity. Anyway, so when we look at when somebody in my position looks at somebody who's an elite level CrossFitter and they seem so far away, or a high level MMA guy, and then he pops positive for steroids. It's a little disheartening, not so much that they're using steroids, but that we can't have this honest dialogue about steroids. That guy can't come out and say, hey, to be competitive, you're going to have to do this. I mean, I don't care. I don't care if, the most popular guys in the world use steroids. I just want the honesty.
One thing that strikes me about this is it pops out at me every time I watch the CrossFit Games on ESPN when they show the flight, and they show the names of the rankings, and they show the flag next to the athletes. This international world championship is 99% Americans. And that's just a fact that this is still really young, and developing athletes around the world don't quite know enough about this to target this as a competition. But one thing's for sure, in America, even though some people are always going to cheat, it's probably going to be not a lot of people, because we have this bizarre, other drugs are great and fine, especially the ones over the counter, regardless of safety and efficacy. But steroids is this thing, oh man, I couldn't do that. It's this, this dogmatic view.
No other drug can you get dragged in front of Congress and questioned in front of the whole world.
But this is not true in probably the bulk of all other countries, especially in former Soviet nations and Asian countries where I think there's this sort of accepted view of some substances. Like in weightlifting, I think it's a perfect analog. There's some open discussions on forums like Glenn's forum, some open exchanges about some of his lifters who have lived with other great lifters from other countries. And for a large part of the year, maybe a guy like Donnie Shangle or something is lifting toe-to-toe with a great Greek or Bulgarian weightlifter. And at a certain time during the year, this guy is going to add, 30 kilos or 40 kilos, whatever, to his total. And that difference is going to be because he started a cycle and he's moving into a different phase and he leaves you in the dust.
Sure.
He's not better than you in any way other than this thing he's doing.
Right.
And he confronts you and says, why wouldn't you take this opportunity to be a world champion? So I think as time goes on, as more flags get on that map and as more international athletes, like some kid realizes he has an additional ticket to fame and fortune in his country, and that's winning his CrossFit Games. And in that country, it's accepted that you can do some things that you couldn't do in America. He's going to do it, and he's going to compete and potentially take a lot of these competitions. It's going to become more and more of a problem.
Yeah,
I think that's almost certain.
And to be fair, like I think that probably 95% of people who point the finger at steroid use, probably 95% of people who really aspire to be great CrossFit athletes but never get there, steroids wouldn't make the difference. Something else.
No.
They probably pop McDonald's a couple times a week and get wasted on weekends and sleep.
Between the four of us, how many guys can you name?
So what?
Between the four of us, how many guys could you name? Either or in your mind you can think back to have seen them or know of them in a gym around town. This goes for any town in the world. There's plenty of guys who show up to some run-of-the-mill Globo gym and are taking steroids in order to be bloated and puffy-faced to bench 350, which is really great for that guy. But wouldn't win any power to meet.
Yeah,
that's probably the majority of steroid use.
Yeah,
actually.
and
it's giving you a bump. This guy would bench
totally
275 without it.
And I don't know that they care about benching 350. I think they want to look a certain way with their shirt off.
Yeah, I used to train somewhere where they where it was almost everyone was on something. And yeah, I don't think anyone cared about getting stronger. They just wanted to look better.
Right.
It was all about taking your shirt off at the beach that weekend or whatever. And that was the mentality. And you ask those guys what they bench and they'd be like, they probably know, but they don't really care.
Yeah.
Sure.
There's all these kind of degrees. And the other flip side is, again, we talked about before the show, but there are high profile strength web celebrities, or whatever you want to call them,
right,
who sell things and peddle things and sell ideas and are entertaining and they're getting attention, and some of it's good, but some of it's bad. Some of these people are in high profile positions where on camera, on video, in movies, they have said statements like, I'm not going to stop doing this because if I do, I'm going to squat 200 pounds less, and I just can't live with that reality. And these are the same people who do things like instruct CrossFit courses. And that's where I have a real rubber meets the road.
Well, at least those guys
conflict with at least he's being honest.
Yeah,
but
at least those
at
guys
the same
can have
time,
that honest dialogue.
A practical question should be, so I take training advice from you, why? I mean,
or, why do we demonize steroids so badly in the first place?
Well,
that guy's probably fitter than
that's a very valid point.
That if that guy would lose 200 pounds on a squat, he, even with the steroids, he's probably fitter than 95%, 99% of the general populace.
Mm-hmm. Stronger. Fitter.
Well, steroids just allow you to work harder and recover faster, so you can work harder again, so you can recover faster again than you would be able to do otherwise. So, in a lot of cases, people aren't taking steroids because they're lazy. They're taking steroids because they want to be able to work harder and get to wherever they're trying to go faster.
Sure.
So they're not always. I think people think that in a lot of cases that they're just being lazy and trying to take a shortcut, like you were saying earlier. Right. They're not taking a shortcut necessarily. They're taking the only path to 1,200 pound squats.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think the real truth is that there also needs to be the honesty component. Therefore, when some 13-year-old kid seeks your advice and you give it to him, and you're not disclosing the fact that this is just the way this is.
Young
I mean, I like what you're saying.
The guy who's going to train like you.
I mean, even though this guy's being honest about having done steroids before, and then he's instructing people who have never been on it. I mean, is he talking from personal experience, or has he actually trained drug-free athletes before? Because if he hasn't trained drug-free athletes before, then maybe he doesn't have any business telling drug-free athletes how they should train, because he probably has no idea what that's like.
Sure.
Or,
has he trained
effectively.
Have some people trained themselves drug-free and achieve success without? I think that's probably a number that's less than people who get to the podium on one of these sports and who have not done it anywhere close to being
natural as a Twinkie, right?
AIDS. Like, with exceptions, I think there are some really notable exceptions, like guys like Brad Gillingham, I think, who comes from a monstrously genetically gifted family, who I think, if he's taken anything, has probably been very, very next to nothing. But that guy's just a big human being. And he trains a lot differently than other high-level guys who do things that are differently, or fundamentally different. I think there's some guys who you can tell immediately, like, this guy's just a freak of nature. Those guys do exist.
Sure.
Like, the greatest story I ever heard was my old strength and conditioning coach at the University of Memphis told me. He said he was in the gym bench pressing with Bill Kazmaier in Alabama, like in the 70s. Well, Bill Kazmaier was a monster, just genetically gifted in every way and a freak, and also taking loads of shit. I mean, that's just patently obvious to anybody who's looked at the guy. And you saw his early 2000s return to strongman commentary, and he went from being like, 48, 50-year-old fat Bill Kazmaier to having a metric sponsorship in a year. It was like, okay, he made some decisions to do some other things.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this guy who walked into the gym. I forget his name. He was a big local farmer guy. He was like 400 pounds and had never lifted weights. Somebody brought him in. He goes, hey, this guy's Bill Kazmaier. I go, oh, I've seen you on TV. Whatever this guy had said. He's like, oh, I like the bench press with you. He lays down. Like, how you do this? Oh, this barbell is interesting. I don't lift these that often. He lays down and like benches 4 or 5 for 10.
Yeah.
And puts the bar in a rack.
Just
a big fat guy, but not a big slot. He works hard on the forearm.
Sure.
And then I think Kazmaier leans over to his friend who I guess also owns the gym and goes, if you invite this guy back, I'm never training here again. Because there's this weird sort of conflict with, I'm doing certain things. Here's this guy who just has this gift and doesn't really work for it, doesn't have to do things I do, and he just he could beat me. And there's this strange sort of like, if you get this guy out there, I'm gonna quit. I'm leaving this gym.
I remember the old story I heard about Kazmaier growing up was that he used to do conferences or just like strongman meetups or whatever, and like as part of the demonstration for the day, he would pick 5 guys out of the audience, and they would take the 90s, the dumbbells, and 5 guys would go try to press them overhead, and then he would add up the number that all 5 of them did, and then he would do it himself.
Right.
And those are 90-kilo dumbbells.
Nice.
Jeez.
Which is
about 200 pounds.
Yeah. Which is crazy heavy.
That's a ridiculous dumbbell.
But that kind of brings up another point. Like, okay, when you're a young CrossFitter, up and comer, you want to be strong, you want to be fit, you're looking at people for advice. There's the drug issue that is obvious. The other issue is some guys you're looking to are freaks.
Sure.
And they can just do things that you just can't do. It's like Leslie Schilling used to tell me stories about the Grizzlies and how one of the more famous point guards they had in the past, she always get on this case like, why don't you eat these? Because this guy would show up, eat like 3 hot dogs, and play high-level professional basketball. I'm like, why do I gotta worry about my nutrition? I had to eat hot dogs. I make like $10 million a year playing basketball. Sure. The guys, that's a good point. Okay.
If I was making $10 million a year, I'd be eating something better than hot dogs.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the stories I hear about. You know Rich really well. Does Rich pay a whole lot of attention to his diet all the time? Is he sometimes eating hamburgers and whatever he wants, and he competes at a high level? The guy is a freak. It doesn't mean, me and Brad Pope want to get better at CrossFit. We don't have to worry about eating hamburgers. We'll just train because Rich Froning eats hamburgers. Right. That's the kind of disconnect you have to face. Like,
right.
So if you're also talking about mirroring his training and trying to do the things he does, regardless of what you do, it's going to be foolish. It's going to end.
You should probably mirror his nutrition as well. So that's what I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So but that's the kind of discussion you got to have. Like, if I'm going to mirror, I got to realize some things that are going to really affect the outcomes of what I'm doing.
Right. Ironically, I feel like that's probably the only area that I would ever be able to compete with Rich Froning in anything.
I will eat more
I bet I could probably eat more
Rolos
than Rich Froning.
Yeah. It ain't even
Gauntlet
close,
laid
son.
down if you're out there listening, Rich Froning.
He probably is. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to take a break real quick, and when we come back, we're going to talk about gaining muscle and weight and stuff like that without having to take the juice.
Cheers.
Coffee, tequila, barbells. Coffee, tequila, barbells. That's all you need. You are like, this is just like 60 minutes. I think you're gonna learn how to apply some very simple, powerful concepts to your everyday training and kickstart what you do in the gym and get about the business of being stronger than you ever thought you could be. You're gonna be so strong, your mom's gonna be like, what's happening to you? Who are you hanging out with? Your friends are bald with goatees. If you want to be strong, you don't have to shave your head. It helps, but you don't have to. Being as strong as possible is the coolest thing I can imagine.
Hey guys, Mike Bledsoe here with Technique Wad. Today we're going to talk about snatches and your third pull. That would be the pull that you do to get underneath the bar. All right? Technically, snatch, it's one long pull. So the third pull begins at the basically when you start shrugging, okay? So you're already on your toes, and what has to happen is you have to pull yourself underneath the bar, okay? One of the things that I'm really bad about, and a lot of other people are too, is actually actively pulling themselves underneath the bar. You can be told this all the time. I try and give a verbal cue to people, like pull yourself underneath the bar. But a lot of times what ends up happening is they get here and they kind of fall underneath the bar and don't actively get underneath. And that's when you watch these guys who are really high-level Olympic lifters, they get under the bar really, really fast. What they're doing is they're actually using their arms and pulling themselves down. So to remember to do that, and during your snatch, it's going to be really hard to put it all together, and remember to do that too. Because a lot of times you're really focused on trying to get a big jump. So what I like to do is I like to do speed high pulls in between snatches. So I like to do this when I'm warming up. So I'll do like 5 of these. And then what I noticed that when I do these, I'm much better about getting underneath the bar, snapping it overhead, and it actually feels really good on my shoulders. If I don't do this, sometimes I tend not to finish that pull, and if I don't, I may still make the snatch, but it really, really makes my shoulders hurt. But if I get a good pull underneath, it'll land there and it'll feel really solid. All right, so this is what a speed high pull is gonna look like. You're gonna go to about mid-thigh, so you're gonna practice finishing with your hips. So you're gonna go here, come up, you're gonna drag that bar up, or I say it'll brush up your legs. You're gonna come to the top, and right when you get here, what I want you to do is I want you to pull that up as fast as you can, okay? So you want a lot of velocity here. What you don't want is to be lazy about it, because some of it is practicing the motion, but it's also about practicing the speed of it, okay? We're trying to not only do motor pattern, but teach your muscles to move fast. All right, so the speed that you're doing PVC pipe, you also want to do with a heavy barbell. So it's going to look like this. So you want to aim for your forehead, so it should be here. Think about elbows coming up. What you don't want to do is having your elbows coming back. You want your elbows coming up. You hear? So this is what it'll look like. I'll do about 5 of these. All right. I'm making sure that I'm actually trying to mimic what's happening at the hips and legs for this too. So I'm driving the ground with my legs here. So I'm teaching my body to kind of all work together. So I'm gonna get 5 of these in. I'll set the bar down. I'll set the PVC pipe down. Wait 20, 30 seconds. I'll walk over to my bar and I'll do my heavy snatch then. I like to do this during the warm up, and if it doesn't fatigue you very much, which it shouldn't, you can do them in between each one of your lifts. You can also do this for cleans. It's just gonna be closer. You're not gonna come as far up. So here. Again, think about elbows up. You don't want elbows back. You want elbows up, okay? If you do this, you should feel a difference getting it overhead if you're not very good about pulling underneath. All right, guys, see you next time. Welcome back. We're discussing moderate weights, medium speeds, but with Brad Pope, supplements, steroids, gaining muscle,
Chinese shops with women playing violins fakely and boy shorts.
Exactly, and we're gonna. I promise you that we're gonna talk about gaining muscle without the use of steroids. I want to go into something real quick though. I entered a Daily BS the other day and talked about the guy. I'm not sure. I think we can go into this question in a little more detail. There's a guy, he weighs about 165 pounds. I'm not sure how tall he is. He was squatting, in the low 3s, deadlifting in the low 4s, and he was asking, his end goal. It's pretty strong, and his end goal is to be competitive at CrossFit. So he was kind of asking, like, should I forsake the conditioning for a while to really pursue the strength? What's the best route here? And I advised him to get stronger, but I think I may have left out some of the details on what I would do. So I'll tell you right now, and that is that you probably need add about 100 pounds to your squat, add about 100 pounds to your deadlift if you want to truly be competitive. I don't know any guys that are going to the games, and there's plenty of guys that aren't going to the games that are just placing, top 30 at regionals, and those guys are all deadlifting around 500 pounds.
They've all.
I'm not seeing anyone who's not doing
Olympic
that.
lifts as well.
Sure.
And they're all at least in the 185 to 215 range.
Yeah, they all weigh. Yeah, exactly. There's a guy, I can't remember the name of the blog, but he does a lot of stats with the open regionals and the games. Maybe I can try to find that and post that, but I know it was on my Facebook wall at some point. But it was he basically talked about like the average weight of the guy, the guys that were doing the best. You know, it ended up being like 185, 190 last year. You know, they're between 5'8" and 5'9". You know, and you know, you watch these guys; they're snatching at least 245 pounds. So that's a big snatch.
They're cleaning 315 or more.
If you want to be able to do those things, you are going to have to lay off of. And this used to not be the case because CrossFit used to not be this competitive. You used to be able to just jump on CrossFit.com, do the WOD, and then show up, and you do pretty damn good. But now what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to say, okay, I'm preparing for 2 years from now, and I'm going to have to really develop myself, not just in strength, but in skill as well. So everything's becoming much more skill-based. So you're going to have to really sit back and do a lot of raw strength work and a lot of Olympic weightlifting type work. I don't advise, I used to advise a little bit more strongly about just forsaking conditioning altogether and just get stronger only. But I've seen some pretty good results out of guys who just cut their conditioning back and maybe stayed away from the longer duration stuff, maybe kept it very interval based, you know, keep the intervals really, really short, keep it fast and keep it light for your conditioning, and then maybe 2 or 3 days a week. But 5 days a week, you are lifting heavy. And then maybe go through phases of hypertrophy where you're lifting heavier weights or lighter, well, I'll say heavier weights. Yeah, moderate weight at medium speeds.
Stay away from my specialty, huh?
No, I mean, that's exactly what you want to do. You want to load up, you know, stuff that you can do sets of 10 with if you want to put on size. So you probably need to go through some cycles where you get bigger and then you get stronger. I mean, with size is going to come some strength, but if you weigh 165 pounds, you probably want to shoot to get to 195 pounds first. And then try to get strong to fill your weight out.
If you're a trained guy who's a little bit smaller naturally, that's not going to be an easy thing. That's going to take a lot of focus.
Right.
A lot of focus.
It's not going to be an easy path for you to put on 30 pounds.
Yeah, so, I mean, my advice is to do, you know, your strength training. You're going to cycle back and forth between, like, hypertrophy phases and strength phases. But, you know, keep the conditioning light, short, and then your eating is going to have to be phenomenal.
A lot of really good food.
Just eat big.
I personally, my favorite method for gaining weight is, and I've tried everything. It is goat milk. I personally prefer goat milk just because cow's milk gives me congestion. The casein messes me up. But you can use any kind of milk, really. And I mean, I can eat paleo, and if I just crush, I probably eat around 3,000 calories a day, paleo. And if I crush a gallon of milk on top of that, which is going to add another 2,500 to 3,000 calories in a day, I tend to put on weight really fast. And
Imagine that.
And I get strong real fast too. Like, it's not just like I get big and fat. It's, you know, my squat goes up, my press goes up, everything goes up. It's pretty miserable, but it works. And if you can go with raw milk, that's preferable just because the fats in that milk are probably from pastured animals, and it also has not been pasteurized, so the fats are going to be higher quality and stuff like that.
Yeah, but there's not a Doug can speak to this, mate. There's probably not a bottle of muscle milk in the world that can touch just a cheap glass of milk, right? I mean, in terms of cost versus benefit.
Yeah, it's cheap and it's pretty well balanced overall. I mean, kind of like he's saying, if you can get it raw, that's ideal, which is illegal in Tennessee. Is that right?
It is. It's actually a felony. Yeah.
We don't know anyone that's ever done
I
that.
actually go to a state where it's legal. I drink it there, and then I come back.
Right.
Yeah,
it's digested by the time it gets back,
Yeah.
so it's
You
not
know,
really raw milk
while we're
anymore.
answering this question, I this has popped up over the last few days. James from OPT recently made a post on his OPT blog that to the effect that, you know, he feels that CrossFit may be taking a little bit of too much of a strength skewed direction. He says that there's something maybe kind of wrong.
I believe that James probably feels that way.
When these, he says
I believe him.
He says he believes there's something that might be kind of wrong when your top athletes could qualify for a USA Olympic weightlifting meet, but couldn't qualify for a high school track meet.
I think that's bullshit.
So now, conversely,
Thank you, CTP.
It's what's helping them win the games, though.
I think
it is biased towards heavy weightlifting.
right,
I think a lot of those guys can do pretty well at track meets.
right. So conversely,
Plus, who wants to look like a high school track athlete? I don't think that's a good argument.
Conversely, Mark Ripto posted on T Nation about how he believes that, and
CrossFitters are too weak.
no. Well, he believes that strength translates to athletics more than endurance ever will. He thinks that
Absolutely.
strength makes a better foundation for
Strength-
athleticism than
People take
Strength
steroids.
actually can have a greater effect on endurance than endurance training. So there you go.
yeah. So do you guys kind of weigh into that strength is much more important than your endurance training?
Oh man, this is like a whole nother podcast.
Yeah,
You
sorry,
just
guys.
totally
It really is.
threw that in there. That's a really good topic, actually.
Yeah.
It's just yes or no question. Okay?
Yeah, okay, I'll go. No,
Sorry, Mike.
You're making
I mean, they
Derailed.
literally just popped up within like 20. I just read them within like 24 hours of each other.
yeah, I don't think people are. These guys are doing WODs for 3-4 days in a row in a week. If that's not endurance, you're a moron. All right.
Well, in the CrossFit
And
Games, they did a triathlon.
They did. They did a sprint.
endurance shit.
They did a sprint triathlon. They're doing, they're throwing things.
Right.
They're not just doing metcons.
Right now, here's my
pushing
question to
sleds.
that. You look at their snatch numbers, and their snatch numbers. I would assume even during the games are probably USAW meet worthy. I have no idea what their sprint try times are. Are they competitive sprint try times compared to like a professional?
Well, the problem is the
Sprint try guy?
the sprint try they did was they were wearing fins.
Right.
And then they were in the sand so much on the bikes in the run that
Yeah.
it would be a very, very tough comparison.
Right,
Unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah, I would like to see an even comparison. There are some CrossFit athletes, some high level guys going and running a marathon is not hard for them.
Sure.
Like I'm not sure what their times are. Michelle Kenny is someone who does really well. She comes from an endurance background though, so
Right.
maybe it's not a good example, but
Sure.
she runs half marathons at really fast paces.
Sure.
Yeah, she does. She's very competitive at
Right.
that. So, and no one would call Michelle weak.
Right.
But going back to that same blog where that guy runs all those stats
Right.
he also ran a bunch of stats on priority of movements at the Open, regionals, and at the games.
Right.
And what got the highest. The movement that was ranked the highest was actually the snatch.
Yeah,
So
I've
James
seen that.
James may be right in the movement selection.
Right.
But as far as strength and stuff like that,
Right.
I would have to disagree.
Sure.
I think that the people that are in the games are insane athletes, and if they chose to do some kind of endurance
This last
event.
game I thought was actually one of the more well balanced things I've seen at a CrossFit. I thought it was well done.
Yeah, those
in terms of a wide
stats.
array
The
of-
stats showed that at the Open it was lightweight and like a lot of weightlifting type movements, a lot of barbell stuff. At regionals it was heavy, real heavy, not a lot of like gymnastic skill work. And then once they got to the games, it was a whole lot of gymnastics. It was much more. It wasn't as heavy as regionals, which was like, at first thought you're like, oh, you'd think it'd be heavier at the games. It's not. It's much higher skill. So that the weightlifting at the games is not as difficult as it was at regionals this past year.
I'd say if there's a bias, there's a skill bias. You have to be very skilled and efficient to do well.
Hey, they were hitting a thing with a hammer. What the hell is that?
There's a wide array of complex things.
Unknown and unknowable.
That's right.
It's pretty unknown.
So let's just cut that down to brass tacks. Like, do you think endurance is as important as strength training? Yes or no?
No.
Okay.
I definitely think strength is more important. Like strength is the foundation for all movement. You have to be able to do something at all to be able to do it many times.
Right.
Right. So if you're talking about like endurance, like doing a try, you're doing something super low load for a long time.
Sure.
But in a CrossFit competition, usually you're doing something moderate weight, medium speed.
Right.
And if you're really, really strong, then your moderate weight has a much larger range than someone who's just not as strong.
Sure.
So
There's
being
actually
freaky
research
strong,
to support that.
Crazy.
yeah, being freaky strong is
Science.
going to be the
Science
first
neat.
thing you need to
Science.
cover. There's going to be a point of diminishing returns for sure. You know, if you take your deadlift from 550 to 650, well, maybe you could have spent the time it took you to get that extra 100 pounds doing something else that could have helped you a lot more. There's an opportunity cost there.
Sure.
Absolutely. But being able to, you know, front squat double body weight or snatch body weight in half, you know, those are some things that are going to get you very far in the world of CrossFit.
Sure.
The other thing too, in regard to just health, you know, you take somebody who say they've been a marathon runner their whole life. At 65 years old, I think Brian Schilling was joking about this with somebody who's like, you know, at 65 you're not going to be able to like unscrew the lid off your jar. At 65 I will.
Right.
You know, like most guys should be packing on probably as much healthy muscle as possible because you're going to start losing it when you get older.
Sure.
And then Andy Galpin, he's got a really great Dr. Galpin out of Cal State Fullerton. Yeah, he has a really great presentation on how leg strength is a better correlation to heart health than anything else we can measure.
Crazy.
And that's, you know, lipid profiles and VO2 max and all that
All
BS.
that shit.
Yeah, like, you know, again, it goes back to strength is probably more important. And if you're not very strong, then what's the point? I mean, why would you even want to live?
Why would you even want to live? Yeah. Throw yourself off the Chrysler Building.
I feel like we hit the best part of this whole thing at the very end.
For older people, losing power, the ability to produce force quickly, they lose that much quicker than losing pure raw strength.
Sure.
So training older people for power is like one of the things that's of the biggest importance.
Right.
The other thing is training older people for mobility. Actually,
You say more ability?
Mobility.
For more mobility.
I was like, more ability.
Actually, it's well, I won't bring that up quite yet. Here, I got a quiz for you. What's the number one mobility restriction that puts older people into old people homes?
I would guess hips or knees.
I'm going to say ankles.
We're talking about joint?
Yeah. What restriction?
Neck.
Closer.
Back.
Yes, thoracic spine rotation.
Oh, really?
So they're
Because once they can't rotate and once they can't wipe themselves, that's when the kids are like, "No, you got to go in the home."
you gotta go.
Is that real or is that a joke?
No, I just heard that. I watched Mike Boyle's Functional Strength Coach 4, and he was talking to a guy that he knows who primarily trains older people, and that's what that guy told him, and he said that on that DVD series.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, I totally didn't know that.
Yeah. So now I guess
So
now
you'd be like 55, like, Ashley, I can't reach. You're in trouble, man.
I'm getting really worried now. Like, it
you
hurts.
could
Your
just
ass
take the
in a nursing
sumo
home.
approach where, you know, the lower guy on the totem pole wipes
That's
you.
right.
I know Olympic weightlifting does not help my T-spine rotation at all.
We're gonna have so many older athletes at our gym doing thoracic rotation drills this
That's
week.
right.
It's like, so what brought you
That's
to,
actually terrifying.
What brought you to
I'm going
faction?
to start doing thoracic rotations this week.
I need to wipe my ass.
Right. So I guess now that we've kind of established that baseline, that we've decided, and as a collective, that strength is more important. How do we do that without steroids?
No, you can get strong enough.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like for CrossFit in regard to steroids, you can get strong enough to be competitive at CrossFit without doing steroids, but to do the volume, what may end up being the game changer is maybe not absolute strength gains, but what may be the fact that if you're doing drugs, you can just train more frequently with more volume. So you might be able to, attain more endurance and stuff like that, just because you can increase your work capacity.
Right.
Yeah, without if you're eating very wisely, you're investing in good food, you're investing in sleep, you're prioritizing those things, and if you're carefully considering training stimulus and you're carefully organizing it, you should be strong enough to be fine. Sure. It's just that if a guy chooses to do it the other way, he's going to be better than you quicker. But I think within CrossFit, there's plenty of a skill component where you can make up that bit of ground without taking that route.
I think if you lack some of the basic skills and being athletic through some of those movements, there's no amount of drugs that are going to get you there.
Yeah, the good thing, like if you look at maybe perhaps a final point, in America, like in gymnastics, we still kick ass even without drugs because there's huge skill and cultural components that make us able to compete at a high level. shot put and strongman and weightlifting, where the strength components are much higher and drugs play a bigger role. It's not like that. But I think CrossFit's much more like gymnastics than it is those other sports. I think you can still excel with attention to detail, skill work, effort, recovery means you can do well. There's no need to resort to drugs, but it's going to get to a point where it's going to become more of an issue for sure. I mean, it's going to happen. But there's a reason why we still kick China's ass in weightlifting, despite the crazy shit they're up to. Go America!
We did?
No. Yeah, we won gold medal. Well, the women did.
Oh yeah.
It's like, yeah, remember the gold?
But the men were
the gold medal.
The men are contenders.
That
if the men don't get on the podium, they're a disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
So we are still highly competitive in gymnastics. There's a reason.
Yeah.
Skill
in
matters.
Gymnastics we are. Oh, you're talking about weightlifting and gymnastics a second ago?
Gymnastics.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. We kicked China's ass in weightlifting. I was like, I don't remember that at all.
Where there's more balance between endurance and skill and strength, there is still the opportunity to just outwork somebody who has an advantage over you.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we'll remain pretty good at basketball, too. Skill matters. Skill matters. That's such a... Everybody look at me and goes, skill matters.
Yeah.
It does.
That didn't have anything to do with muscle or strength.
Yeah.
What's he talking about?
Skill, drugs, practice. Not as sexy as bullshit coffee, weightlifting, powerlifting.
Oh, we're gonna
let's
call
shut
it
it
down.
down.
I was just gonna pull my microphone away. See how long this could go on without me.
Yeah.
All right. What do you want to plug, Doug?
I guess
that rhymes.
Fucked up. Very good. Good job.
How many
Mike.
times has that been used?
I guess I always plug maximum mobility, but we talk more about nutrition for today's episode, so I'll talk a little bit about that. I want to say maximum mobility. The Faction Foods Nutrition course, excuse me. We talk a little bit about supplements in it, but for the most part, the majority of the course, is dedicated to exactly what to eat and how to structure your meals, and gives you a good framework on which to kind of hang your decision-making process, so you always know what to eat and when to eat it, regardless if you're trying to lose weight, improve your performance, or just trying to gain muscle mass, just like we were going to talk about on the second half, but we never really got to.
No, we didn't at all.
Never really got to it.
That's how.
Yeah.
I said to drink milk, man.
That's right. Drink milk if you want to get bigger, and do bodybuilder squats, sets of 8 to 12.
Nice.
There you go.
Good luck. Godspeed.
All right, so check out the Faction Foods Nutrition course in the Fitter store. Chris?
Yeah, thechrismooreblog.com. New post up today. Go read it. Check it out. It's cool.
What's it called?
Of bulls and China shops.
Perfect.
There you go.
You can write that when you get home.
Oh, I wrote it. It actually exists on there. Now. On the internets. Googles it.
I don't believe you.
You don't have to believe me.
What do you got, Brad?
I got nothing. I didn't know I was supposed
If
to
anyone needs some hard water.
Right.
That's why I start with Doug. That way,
Yeah.
the guest can be like, "Oh shit, I'm supposed to say something."
multilevelchina.org/whatever.
We will have a new seminar coming out here pretty soon. You looked at me like you didn't know which one it was.
Is that a question?
I'm really confused.
Yeah, Paul's seminar is going to be coming out here in the next couple weeks, so be on the lookout for that. We'll have it in the Fitter shop, hopefully maybe a week after this episode posts.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also a nutrition seminar.
Did you plug, Mike?
No, I didn't.
Plug.
Yeah.
Plug
Again, go to fitter.tv. Sign up for the newsletter. Check out our stuff. Subscribe to us on the Twitters.
Go to Fitter TV and read everything. That's basically what's happening here.
Catch up,
Right.
if you're behind.
Yeah.
So, see you next time.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.